Zoom, 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 zoom.
Here's the thing, we started out friends. It was cool, but it was all pretend. Yeah. Since you've been gone, so gone, so gone. Hey, Jen.
Hi, Al.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I almost didn't recognize you.
I know, I've got this like bronze glowy tan.
You just have that glow about you.
For those who don't know, I was in Arizona.
Soaking up the desert.
Yeah. One of the days we were there, it was 118.
Ew.
Yeah.
Jail.
Yeah.
Criminal.
It's a crime against humanity.
It is.
I melted. Literally.
Keelan, my cousin, actually posted on her Snap story today about, you know how you get like the little warning signals or things. It said imminent dust storm or something like that. And it was like, take cover, stay alive. And it basically just said like, pull over off the road as far as you can, put your car in park, but like with your foot on the brake so people can see your taillights. Like, it was dramatic. So I'm glad that you didn't have to deal with an imminent dust storm.
Me too, because that sounds horrifying.
Melting in the Arizona sun.
Yeah.
Which is bad.
But it was fun.
That's
overall.
good.
I'm happy to be back, though. I feel like I haven't been here in forever. I miss you guys. I missed Alex. I missed my little chair and my mic. But we had a really good guest.
I missed you, Mike.
I missed... Oh, that could start some drama. I missed Mike. I missed my mic. M-I-C.
Microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah. No mic. No Michael.
No.
Just the mic.
Exactly.
Okay.
But we had a really cool guest last week.
Yeah, we did. I can't wait for you to meet Antonia. She was lovely. She said she had a really good time too.
Good.
Which is like obviously best case scenario.
The best.
So hopefully we can have her on again. And Jen and I have been talking about possibly getting a third mic so that way like all of us can be a part of episodes sometimes. But if not, Antonia and Jen will do like a part 2.
I love that. That sounds so fun.
Then the Gen Zers can get together and I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I love
girls who know girls, you know?
Ooh.
Yeah. We need a disclaimer.
All right. Haven't done this in a minute, so sorry guys, I might be a little rusty. But in today's episode, we are going to be talking about our opinions on things. And our episode topic of the day is the art of saying no.
No.
So, disclaimer, we're going to be giving our opinions on this topic and how we struggle with saying no, some advice on how to say no, what comes along with that. But disclaimer, we have opinions. If you don't agree with them or your opinion doesn't align with ours, that's okay. You're entitled to your own opinion, but this is our platform. So
buzz off.
Bye.
Yeah. It's okay.
Peace out, Girl Scout.
I think disagreeing is super cool.
I agree.
And I think respecting disagreements is even cooler.
Love that energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Al, do you want to start?
Oh, me? My turn?
Yeah.
Okay.
What if you said no?
I should put my foot down. We'll get into that because you don't say no to things that you want to do.
Yeah.
You say yes. And I'm saying yes to this episode.
Love it.
Here we go. I would like to start off by saying that I used to have a very hard time saying no for a lot of different reasons. People pleasing is probably one of them. I think that I had a lot of growing up to do. I think saying no is a maturity that you need to kind of come into. I don't think you can ever stop practicing saying no because with the way that life works out for you, there are going to be things in certain seasons of your life where your no's will change, your yeses will change. For a while, I was saying no to working out because I was lazy and could not be disciplined. So those are things that I'm now saying yes to. So I feel like they're kind of interchangeable, you know, like, and saying no doesn't need to be as negative or dramatic, but you can say no to things that are really big or really small. But like Jen was saying, the art of saying no, it's a constant thing. You're going to ebb and flow throughout life. Some things you want to say no to, even if you're a really good knower, you're going to have a really hard time pinpointing when you should say no. and be like, oh, damn, I should have said that. But I said yes instead. And now here I am at this function, not wanting to be here. I will say that Jen is going to cover some very specific scenarios and go like a little bit deeper. So I'll just start very broad. And with that being said, I want to say that saying no to people or things does not need to be a very specific scenario. It doesn't need to be one question. It could just be you thinking of a group of people that you went to high school with or college, and you're just saying like, nope, I don't want to be associated with them anymore. So that's like the broad sense where you're just not putting your time and energy into that. And I feel like that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you have allergies to a food or something and you're like, oh, can't eat Italian food because I have a gluten intolerance. I mean, like that's like very lighthearted and like a very easy scenario to talk about. But I mean, you kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. Like it could be something where you want to say yes to specific things in there, but you're not really sure where it's going to lead. So you're like, I'm just going to say no to the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean.
Yeah.
You're like, this event or like whatever you're getting yourself involved with could have multiple opportunities that could bring unknown, I suppose. So instead of being like, I'm going to say yes to this and take a risk, you're just cutting out the risk.
Yeah, exactly. You just think like, I'm not interested in it at all.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say no without even getting more details into it. Like, oh, this event, nope, good. Because maybe you don't drink and you're like, oh, is there drinking there? Nope, not interested.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Cool.
get you.
Thank you for clarifying, because I was talking to Jen before the episode and I was like, I don't know how to say this, but I need to say it.
I think what you said makes total sense to me.
Apply it however you will, please. If it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, just fast forward and go to my point number 2. So number 2, I want to talk about the fear of missing out, because FOMO has kept me from saying no to a lot of things that I probably wanted to deep down.
I hear that.
College specifically, tail end of high school, getting myself into a lot of situations that I probably shouldn't have been in. But in my mind, not being there is worse than being there and not enjoying my time. How do you feel about FOMO? Like, what's your experience with it?
I feel like everyone experiences it in some aspect, but me personally, well, kind of like you were talking about a little bit before, I'm definitely a people pleaser, and that's one reason why I say yes to things. But also, FOMO is a huge reason why I say yes, because I like being there and experiencing things, and sometimes it feels weird to not be a part of the situation and then hear about it later. So if you can avoid that at all costs, you might as well just go, even if you don't really want to, other than the fact that you'd be missing something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably more difficult when you have one main friend group and everybody is hanging out with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a thought come to my mind, like girls specifically. Let's say that you have a very close group of friends that are girls. Girls can be gossipy. They can be a little dramatic. And I just wonder that maybe if, let's say that the girls are going to do something, you've been invited, but you say no. I wonder if your FOMO isn't really about not being a part of the activity, but it's maybe not giving the space for your friends to talk about you while you're not there.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's very specific again. Like I understand that there is going to, again, with the disclaimer, Jen and I were just kind of like spitballing, talking about things, random things,
Yeah.
right? But that's something that crossed my mind where it was like, maybe FOMO doesn't necessarily have to deal with the activity that you're doing. It has to do with the people that are involved.
Yeah,
and
for
not
sure.
being there is maybe a risk, like Jen was talking about, that you don't want to take, because who knows of all these X, Y, and Z reasons that could come out of it. And there's like an anxiety to it, right?
Absolutely.
Not being a part of something that you're like, and even on the flip side, maybe these group of girls, the next time you hang out with them, that's all they're talking about. And now you feel left out because you're like, fuck, I should have been there.
Right.
Like, I should have been a part of this and like vibing with everybody else too, but now you don't get the chance.
I think that's a good way of explaining it.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm all over the place today. Jen's really going to reel us back in
Share
here.
your thoughts. I love
Yeah.
this.
Fear of missing out, I feel like that keeps people from saying no to a lot of things that maybe you should. And that's okay. As long as you can maybe like dissect and pinpoint what exactly it is, I think that's like the next best step to kind of figuring out like, what do you want? I also feel like not saying no or being able to say no to people is finally figuring out like, what do you want out of life? What do you want with your friends? What activities, what interests do you have? Like, really honing in on only what you want and not letting other people's opinions and what they want to do make that choice for you, I guess.
Yeah,
which would
absolutely.
be kind of cool.
You're like putting yourself first.
Absolutely. And it sounds so, I feel like sometimes when we talk about these topics, it seems like really cheesy or like there's some type of feeling behind it that almost seems like cringy to talk about, because it's like, oh, put yourself first, you know, do this, do that. But it's like, that is the secret to having a healthier, happier life. And that's kind of, you know, we like to talk about graphic design, but we also just care about you guys, our listeners, as humans, and hopefully helping you just enjoy life more professionally and personally.
Yeah.
So if things that we're talking about sound cheesy, that's okay. I feel like we need to kind of break the barrier and allow there to be some talk about things that are a little bit more intimate that could be seen that way.
Agreed.
So I'll kind of move on to whenever you say yes to something, it should only really be in addition to what you already have. So, for example, relationships. If I'm very solid in how I'm feeling about my life, I'm not going to say yes to a friendship or a hangout date with somebody that I just met if I don't feel like it's going to add anything to what I already have going. And that's really difficult because to be able to know that, you yourself need to be okay with just you. You know, the self-love thing, you need to make sure that if there weren't anybody else around, that you would be completely content, because after that, everything else in your life should be an addition. If you're starting to say yes to things and you're kind of feeling some toxic energy, or maybe there's some consequences or even some repercussions because you're saying yes to it, those are things that you need to reevaluate and be like, well, why did I say yes to it in the first place? Maybe you didn't know that that was going to be a possibility, but when you say yes to something that you realize you should have said no to, make sure you're doing the time to reflect and be like, okay, I won't say yes to that again in the future. So there's a big learning curve with saying no. We're just hitting the surface. I can't wait to hear what Jen has to say, but it's okay if you're not good at saying no right now. And just practice. Start practicing. That's another thing that I put in here, is saying no initially is really hard because you have built this really poor habit of saying yes to everything, being the yes man, right? Saying yes is almost like instant gratification. It feels really good right up front, but then you can almost feel like the anxiety of it linger as you're maybe doing whatever you said yes to, and you're just like, damn, I had a feeling I couldn't say no in the first place, and now here I am, and I feel uncomfortable as hell, and I don't want to be doing this.
Right.
But let's say the same scenario comes around again. For some reason, because it's a bad habit and so ingrained in you, you may automatically say yes to it without even putting any thought into what you just agreed to. Maybe kind of what we had talked about in other episodes, where maybe your fight or flight is kind of triggered a little bit. And what you need to do is, instead of responding right away, unless you know it's something that like your best friend asked you to do, where she's like, hey, are you free this day or that day? Like, let's have lunch. Say yes, like if that's what you want. But if there's a party they're asking you to go to, or if your boss is asking you to do something, and because your people-pleasing nature comes out, or you just automatically want to appease other people and make them feel good, take a quick break and just say, hey, does this actually make me happy, or is it making other people happy? You know? And be more thoughtful with your decisions. Like Jen said, put yourself first.
Yeah.
It's okay to pump the brakes and consider and weigh your options. Like,
absolutely.
There is no timestamp on when you need to give somebody an answer.
I feel like kind of exactly what you're saying. Sometimes it probably feels like there's a pressure to just give an answer right away up front. I feel like there almost always is, but it's definitely okay to sit back for a second and say, you know what? Maybe I'll let you know. I just got to think about some things. Obviously,
Yeah.
you can tell them however much you want or however little you want. That is your personal choice and you have a right to do that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with just taking a step back, evaluating the situation, and specifically your energy, where you want to focus that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get into that later. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think you
that's a
bring up
really
a good
good
point.
point. I also think too, you don't need to respond at all until you have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So Jen gave an example of being like, just say, let's say that this is a text conversation, right? Somebody reaches out to you, asks you something. You don't even need to let them know you've read the text message, because another thing that I think this kind of leaks into is maybe people assume you will say yes without even giving you the opportunity to decide if that's something you want to do. So a lot of other people will maybe pressure you into saying yes when they don't really care if it has anything to do with you. They just want you there. And it's like, well, why do I need to be doing your activity?
For sure.
Kind of a thing. So also, we do not need to be so accessible to people. I have had a really hard time coming to terms with this. I'm a very poor texter unless it's between a family member who I haven't talked to in a really long time. That conversation I will drop everything for. If Jen's texting me, for the most part, probably more with work is when I'm the quickest. Yeah. But my boyfriend, obviously, him and I are almost in constant communication, at least for most of the day. My parents, but pretty much besides that, most of my friendships, I don't think any less of them. And it's not that I don't want to respond, but I just feel like I've kind of grown out of the urgency to respond to people right away, because I'm like, they don't need an answer right now. Reading this text message, if it prompted a response that needed to be right then and there, obviously I would call them or respond right away. But a lot of the times it's just, hey, what's up? How are you doing? The answers that these people are searching for, they don't need to be right then and there. So I would also say, don't feel like you need to be so readily accessible to people. I think, is it nice for people when they think of you to be like, oh yeah, I'm sure she'd be down? But I also think that there's a respect level too for yourself. If people were to be like, I'm not sure if she'll come, but I'll ask. I feel like that's kind of a really nice place to be, instead of people always assuming that you'll just say yes to everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The last thing that I'll talk about, speaking on that, is surround yourself with people who support your no's. Because if you have somebody who doesn't respect your boundaries and you setting a boundary that maybe a no will imply, they are not in your corner. If you say no to somebody and they make you feel bad about it, I'm even thinking specifically more bosses now. I know a lot of local businesses, and I've just heard through the grapevine too, through many years in different businesses and in different careers, is small businesses will ask you to do a lot outside of work hours that you're not paid for. But then when you say no to them, it's almost like they're shocked that you even think that you gave them an option. It's like, oh, I was asking, but actually you need to be here. It could be an after hours party or something else. And it's like, are you getting paid? No. Is it overtime? No. Then why can't you say no to it?
Right.
There is no incentive, and there is nothing that was agreed to in your description in your job where that needs to have you be put there. I don't know. I just feel like work that happens quite a bit, and then that person will be, even asking for PTO. Hey, I need you to be in town for this. And it's like, well, actually you already approved my PTO. And they'd be like, oh, well, can you move? It's like, no, I put my PTO in. You need to be okay with me not giving you everything that you want in the time that you want it. It's also, you saying no is also very healthy for other people who don't know healthy boundaries. It kind of, there's a way to say no to and still being very respectful and gracious and very sweet about it, but you can still be very firm on that. But other people need to learn how to take a no as well. Saying and taking one, very completely different things, but they're interchangeable.
Well, I think you bring up exactly why saying no is so hard. You never know how the other person is going to react to it. You never know their emotional situation, how they've handled things like that in the past when they've said no to people. everyone obviously goes through so many different situations, and that's what makes every single person so unique. We all go through different things and kind of absorb different things as well. So if somebody had a really bad experience after they said no to somebody and now you're saying no to them, they might lash out on you. Long story short is to say, I think that's why saying no is really hard. You never know how people are going to react. And me personally speaking, like that scares me a lot. So I think saying yes is often easier. But I really like the point that you bring up. Surround yourself with people who support your no's. You're never going to know if you have people like that until you like start sticking up for yourself, and maybe even sticking up for yourself is a strong word, but
but
just
like
doing what you want to do.
Exactly. Giving them the opportunity to have to react to them just not assuming that you will just join in on whatever they're asking you to do. And I'm happy that I'm not surprised that you and I see eye to eye on that. Like we're pretty much the same person when it comes to the people pleasing and whatnot. But I think that, yes, it is very important for you to say no, but it's also equally important for that other person to see how they read and react to things and to see if those are people that are worth keeping around, because your life, you will have to make so many decisions, and a lot of the times it will have to be for rightfully so selfish reasons. And I think it's okay. I wish there was a better word that meant selfish but wasn't as like negative as selfish is, because I think selfishness can be very positive and negative. Obviously negative, we can probably all come up with scenarios where selfishness comes out, but I feel like positively speaking, it's like, I'm unhappy in my job, I'm going to quit my job and go somewhere else. I am unhappy with my body and I want a better body image, and I feel like I will accomplish that by going to the gym and not eating out, Anyways, Jen, I want you to take it away. My portion was relatively short. You have the meat and potatoes of this episode, and I cannot wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I kind of popped off on this. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I struggle with this topic. Imagine that. Like I was just kind of getting into, saying no to different tasks or activities or even work can be incredibly difficult, especially for people who tend to people please, like myself, and Alex just mentioned herself as well, so we definitely have some experience in this topic. If you aren't a people pleaser or don't know what I'm referring to when I say that, I kind of have a little definition. People pleasing refers to a pattern of behavior where an individual prioritizes others' needs and desires over their own, often to the detriment of their own well-being. This behavior can stem from I just had dyslexia for a moment. I'm reading a definition of my notes and it says desire, and I read it as Derise. I was like, what the fuck does derise mean? Anyways, this behavior can stem from a desire for approval, fear of rejection, or a need to avoid conflict. People pleasers may have difficulty saying no, setting boundaries, and expressing their true feelings. While being considerate and accommodating can be positive traits, or we think of them as positive traits, chronic people pleasing can lead to stress, resentment, and a loss of personal identity. So,
oh, that's good. Loss of personal identity.
When
I bet
like,
you that's like honestly the deepest rooted problem with it.
I think so too, because if you're just saying yes to things that you don't want to be at, or just saying yes to make others happy, eventually that's just going to take over and you don't really have...
What do you want?
Exactly.
It won't matter because you're just going along with the flow a little too much.
Agreed. So saying no is often difficult because it can trigger feelings of guilt, fear of rejection, and a desire to avoid conflict. Many people, especially chronic people pleasers, worry about disappointing others or being perceived as unkind or uncooperative. I feel like that is a big one for me, the unkind part. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I do take pride in being a generally kind person. So I feel like when I say no to even like, hey, you want to go get a coffee? I'm like just being the biggest fucking asshole.
Yeah, you're like, I cannot believe I'm about to say this, but I can't.
And stuff like that, like, honestly just eats me alive personally. I love hanging out with my friends. I love seeing my family. I love going out and doing things. So if there's something I have to say no to, I'm like, fuck, they're never going to talk to me ever again.
I know.
Just because we didn't get coffee this one time, like, our whole friendship is done. I've never gone to that extreme, but, like, I definitely think about that shit.
Yeah.
Why?
You know what I thought of? So Duluth has a large homeless population, and you see them everywhere on, and they're asking for money.
Oh my God, yeah.
That is a really good example of when I say no to this situation that is out of my control. Like, I don't know this person. I have the right to say no, and that's okay. But when somebody asks me for money and I say, sorry, like, I don't have cash, which is true because I'm not a cash girly. But also, if I did have cash, I would then say, like, no, I'm sorry. I was riding scooters in Canal Park with Brandon the other week, and when we were about to park, this one lady came up and asked me if she could borrow my phone, and I just said, I'm sorry, no, I just don't lend my phone to people that I don't know. And she was like, even if and see, this is the thing, this is the boundary that they're crossing. Obviously, this woman, I don't know her, I don't know if she was on something, what her circumstance was, but she's like, even if you hold the phone and dial it for me and hold it for me, like, and she was just like, maybe saying she didn't have service, or I don't know, but it was just such a weird feeling. But her pressing the second time, I felt like I could have crumbled, but I'm happy that I didn't.
Good.
But I felt weird about it, like I was being a bitch, which is so weird.
I get that, but also, obviously I can't speak from the male perspective, but as a woman, even if it's another woman coming up to me, that shit scares me.
Yeah. Because, like, there's so much, like, if somebody needs something from you so intently and it's a stranger, that's weird. Like, and the approach being maybe a little bit more aggressive than I was expecting. Yeah. It wasn't like a casual question. It seemed like there was, like, a pressing reason. Like, oh, I need to borrow your phone. And I'm like, oh, I feel weird about this. Like, no, sorry.
I'm glad you set a boundary, though, and kind of stuck to it, even though she did press a second time.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of societal and cultural expectations, especially, like, in America. We have a lot of homeless people, so that's a good situation to bring up. But nonetheless, societal and cultural expectations often reward this agreeable behavior. If you give this homeless man a water bottle or a couple dollars, like, you're a savior.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I don't think that, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyways, society definitely rewards this kind of agreeable yes man behavior, making it challenging to assert personal boundaries. Clearly, I'm struggling getting back into my podcast.
Hey, that's okay. Get the jitters out. Yeah. It's okay.
Anyways. This internal conflict between wanting it to be helpful and preserving one's own well-being can make it the simple act of saying no, feeling emotionally complex and fraught with anxiety. That is definitely what you just described as well. This, like, oh, I don't want to be the asshole, but also, like, I'm setting a personal boundary. I have no idea who you are. You're running up to me in a parking lot asking to use my phone.
Yeah.
I think it's good that you set that boundary.
Yeah.
Good job.
This could also be simply called the art of not caring what other people think.
You know what? I like that title.
Because usually, I mean, it is the art of saying no.
Yeah.
However, it does kind of translate into being like, well, a lot of the reason why we will say yes is because we don't want people to think ill of us.
Yeah, or perceive us in a different light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. We're going to take a little sidetrack for a second, but it definitely still ties into what we're talking about. I've talked about this book before on this podcast, and I'm proud to say I have 12 pages left, okay?
Bravo!
Henry and I did the sidetrack again to the sidetrack. Henry and I had a little date last night. He was working, and I was, like, reading on FaceTime. We were just, like,
keeping each
together.
Other company. Yeah.
And I was reading my book that I've been reading since January, I think, but it's called The Perfectionist's Guide to Losing Control, A Path to Peace and Power by Catherine Morgan Schaffler. I highly recommend it. I can't fully recommend it because I haven't fully finished it, but I feel like I'm practically done and it is so fucking good. Highly recommend. Anyways, in this book, she identifies 5 different archetypes of perfectionists, and through her quote-unquote quiz in the beginning of the book, I have discovered that I closely align with the characteristics of the Parisian perfectionist, which I won't get into. I could do a separate episode on that, but it's basically like not wanting to let people down and feel like you can make everyone happy. So, like I said, I'm not going to get into all of this today, but yesterday when I was reading a chapter of this book, I came across a paragraph that really stuck with me. It reads, quote, "When they're not restored, Parisian perfectionists use people-pleasing as a shortcut to disconnection. People-pleasing doesn't work as a bridge to connection because it disconnects you from yourself. You might get across to the other person, but you've left your true self on the other side of the bridge." End quote. I just think that's really ironic that a couple hours after I'm working on my script for this episode, like I read something like that.
Yeah, it was meant to be, for sure. Yeah. I'm glad that you put that in there. And it's such a good point because people pleasing and saying yes to things, we think that it will solve the issue, that it'll make us feel better, that that's what we should have done, but then it actually ends up doing the opposite. Right. And I think that's where you talk about, we feel like it will connect us to people by saying yes and by doing things. But in fact, it's like, let's say that you're meeting somebody new, and let's say that like at this workout studio that I go to, if I meet somebody new and they're like, "Oh, do you want to go to get coffee here?" And maybe I don't like that coffee shop, or maybe there's something there or something deeper about it where I'm just like, yeah, let's go. And then it's like that person actually doesn't get to see the genuine version of me because I just said yes to something that I actually don't care about.
You're like almost putting on a facade.
Yeah, like, it's like a fake connection or like a fake thing that we're bonding over because I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I love that coffee shop, when it's like, ew, no, I don't. I hate that. Why am I pretending to be somebody that I'm not? Yeah, you know?
That's exactly what the quote I read just said. Like, you're leaving a true version of yourself behind. Mm-hmm. And why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why?
Don't.
So, that all being said, you're probably like, Jen, can you bring this together? I'm getting bored listening to your voice.
I'm not getting bored. I am locked in. Good. I am focused, and I am excited to hear. You have some advice for us, right?
I do. I'm going to bring it all around town right now, partner. Okay, how do we avoid chronic people-pleasing and being a yes man or yes woman or yes non-binary person? Yes person.
Yeah.
How do we prioritize our own well-being without feeling like the asshole in this situation? I have some points I'm going to bring up. I have some advice. I think I have 5 points. Yep, 5. Here's number 1.
Woohoo!
Understand and acknowledge your priorities. You got to clarify your goals, know what's important to you, and where you want to focus your energy. We've talked about this before, and we've definitely used this analogy before, but you can't put all of your energy in one cup. Otherwise, the other cups are just going to be empty and you have no energy to do absolutely any of those things. If I'm putting, let's say, roughly 80% of my energy into work and, I don't know, 20% into this podcast, that is way too much on work in general, anything in general. What about my family? What about my boyfriend? What about my personal interests? What about exercising? What about keeping myself healthy?
Yeah.
You got to figure out how, not every cup has to be even, but you have to figure out how to distribute things to make yourself fully complete.
Yeah. And notice when a cup is getting a little empty and you're just like, okay, I got to put some focus back into this. It's all about balancing act, honestly. Right. And I think that when you talked about putting your energy all into one thing, it's like, not only does everything else become, what's the word that I'm looking for? Not does it neglected, I guess you could say, but then that one thing that you're putting all your energy into, it's so overwhelmed and so, like it will then falter and fold because there's too much energy. Right. You know, it's like you think that putting all your focus on your relationship is good, but it's like, no, that's overwhelming. That's too much. It's like there needs to be a balance of all the other things going on.
Absolutely. And it's definitely okay to figure out that balance along the way. Like, obviously, you're not going to have every single cup perfect, full of the exact amount of energy it needs at every single time, and that's okay. It's definitely a learning process. The other one in this section is think your response through. Determine if saying yes aligns with your priorities. This goes directly with that cup thing. If I'm saying yes to getting coffee with somebody this weekend when I really should be cleaning my apartment or going to check in on a family member, does that really align with my priorities? Like, I want to get other things done, but somehow I also need to squeeze this in, and it just causes more disconnect.
Well, and what if you say, like, chores? You say yes to an activity, getting coffee. Now when you get home, your chores are staring at you straight in the face, and you think, shit, why did I do that?
Yeah.
And then now you're beating yourself up, and then who knows, it could be the start of a vicious cycle of you knowing that you've got shit that you need to take care of, but you keep almost now escaping it and saying yes to things that you should be saying no to, so you can prioritize things that make you feel better.
Yeah.
It's just so weird how that works.
Crazy, right?
Crazy.
Okay, number 2, practice self-awareness. You have to recognize your personal limits. Be aware of your physical, emotional, and mental limits. Last week was my first week back from my trip to Arizona, and I was like, oh, I'm feeling so refreshed. I'm ready to work. I'm going to get all these fun projects, but it's not going to be too much because I just got back from vacation. And then the day I get back, I got 8 projects emailed to me.
Oh, shit.
Which, I mean, like, deadlines,
that's cool.
Whatever.
That's life.
All the same. Yeah, it happens. But I was like, oh, okay. This is going to be
It wasn't aligning with the pep talk that you just mentally gave yourself. Yeah. You're like, this isn't what we talked about. Hello. But you can't say no to those things.
Yes.
That's the difference is
exactly.
You have to.
But because I knew this was going to be a really heavy work week, and even this week as well, I definitely had to say no to some things that I was really looking forward to, or even just kind of shifting around how my daily routine goes in my head. It's going to be a couple off weeks because I have a lot of work to get done, and it's going to be very mentally exhausting. But being able to say no to some things, or even yes and prioritizing other things, is definitely going to be better off for you in the long run.
Yeah.
You also have to acknowledge feelings, which some people I know this is really difficult for. It's okay to feel uncomfortable when you say no to something. It's okay.
Usually, if you follow through with it, it will be followed by a large sigh of relief. It'll feel like a weight has been lifted off. You're going to be like, why don't I say more often? I swear it's like it sets you free. Saying no sometimes.
I'm not going to pretend like I haven't said yes to situations that I definitely wanted to say no to. But in my situations, when I do things like that, or if I have, I don't know, I can't confirm or deny if I've done this. But let's say I said yes to some situations that I wanted to say no to. In doing that, it definitely makes me feel even more anxious because I'm like, fuck, I really didn't want to go hang out with this person, but now I feel obligated to, and if I cancel, it's going to seem weird because I haven't seen them in a while and blah, blah, blah. So
and that anxiety like makes you push it off until the last second. So then you're even worried about how that will come off now that it's like, oh, I just waited until the last second to cancel. So now they're going to think X, Y, and Z. And it's just like, it's just such a slippery slope. Yeah. You just don't realize the negative spiral that it brings you down.
It makes it worse in the long run. So why not just be honest and upfront in the first place and say, you know what, I actually don't really feel like doing that. Or I'm not saying making an excuse is okay, but be like, actually, I'm kind of busy right now.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do this another time.
100%. I always refer to this piece of advice that I received. It was from one of my friend's husbands, but he once told me, he said, you need to be honest with people right up front because it's better for them to be upset with you in the short term when you were just being upfront with them and being very straightforward rather than holding on to that bit of information that would have been equally beneficial to the other person to know and then be long-term upset with you because now it's not even about that thing, it's about you not telling them right away and almost lying to them. So just being upfront and saying it how it is, kindly, there's an art to that. Jen and I were talking before this episode, like there's such thing as being honest and what you want to do, but you also don't want to, like, there's a way for somebody to be like, yeah, I'm brutally honest. And it's like, no, you're kind of just being like a crappy human being. Like, you're not trying to be nice at all. There's a way to be firm and kind. Yeah.
It's just my personality.
Yeah, it's just who I am.
Well, you bring up a good point because my number 3 is use positive language. Woo! Come on down. So, be polite yet firm. Use phrases like, I appreciate the offer, but I can't commit right now. Or, like we were just saying, actually, my plate is a little full right now. Could we move this to next week? Or something of the sorts. Also, well, like I just said, offer alternatives. If possible, suggest another way to help that doesn't overextend you, or it doesn't have to be help either, whatever the situation is. But you don't have to say yes to things right in the moment. Like my situation, I am very stressed with work at the moment, or today it's a little lighter, but last week I was really getting put through the ringer. So if somebody was like, hey, you want to go get drinks tonight on like a Wednesday or something? In a normal work situation where I don't have a lot going on or like I don't feel uber stressed, I'd be like, yeah, I'd go for a drink or dinner or whatever. But in this situation, I didn't really have the energy to do much outside of work. So you have to be able to firmly say no or offer alternatives. Hey, my work schedule is really busy right now. Do you think maybe we could do drinks next week or maybe even this weekend instead of a weekday?
Yeah, absolutely. Last week I actually did not anticipate. I had saw a friend at 190, the coffee shop we always talk about. I saw her there and I was like, oh, we should go for a walk later this week. Let's do Thursday after all the things that we each have to do. Well, by the time Thursday came, I had to text her and say like, my social battery is at 0. I would be awful company. It's like I physically can hang out, but I just don't think that.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But in a way, I almost didn't want to because I've done that with this friend before and with this group of friends before. And now I don't want them to think that I'm being a flake. But I mean, moral of that story is like, if that's what they're going to assume about you because you've had to cancel and you've just been genuine and upfront about the reasons why you're not, and you don't even need to provide a reason.
Right.
But if those people are accepting and understand your point of view and they don't treat you any different, that's a great scenario to be in. Obviously, keep trying to make things work with them and reschedule. But if they end up making you feel bad about it, which is not the case for me, by the way, I just want to put that in there. If that's not the case where they're just kind of like being like, oh, you're a flake, like it's just like that's where you probably need to draw a boundary and say maybe we aren't meant to be friends.
Reevaluate some things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Put yourself first. Again, always going back to that.
Number 4, which we've also talked about a little bit as well, delay your response. There you go, Jen. Give yourself some time. Say you need to check your schedule before committing, or, like I was just saying, hey, you know what? I'm really busy right now. Could we come back to this at X date or whatever? You don't have to give them a timeline, but saying no or yes to things right away is not needed. You're definitely allowed to think about things. Evaluate the request as well. Use the time to consider if you really want or need to say yes to this situation. Is this something that aligns with your values? Yes or no? Is this something that you really have time with in your current schedule, in work or life or whatever it may be? My last point. Set those boundaries, girl, boy, them, they, them. That
everybody.
Sounded insensitive. That's not what I meant.
No,
whatever
it's okay.
Your pronouns, set boundaries.
Everybody. Yeah. Set your boundaries. Yeah. That was good.
Lit. All right.
Yeah, that was fire.
Set those boundaries. Be clear and consistent. Define what you are willing and not willing to do. If you really don't want to give your phone to a stranger in the parking lot, fucking tell them.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. And also communicate your limits. Let others know your boundaries respectfully. all of these go together hand in hand. I think I've connected them all pretty well. But like we're saying, communicate your limits, but that doesn't mean saying no has to be in an awful, super negative way.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be so heavy. Saying no is not a big deal.
Agreed.
We are making it a big deal. We think, the overthinkers, we're thinking about how down the road this is going to somehow come back and bite us in the ass or make life harder. It won't. And that is the irrational fear we need to get over and just say, nope, say no one time to something maybe that's not so serious. Practice the not so serious no's. And then when something big happens, you'll feel more comfortable.
Absolutely.
You know?
I love that.
Yeah.
I do know.
Do you know no?
Okay, those are my tips and tricks to life.
Wow, they were good.
Thank
I
you.
have one final thought.
Yeah, I love
Are
that.
we there? Final thoughts?
I think we're there.
Goodness, we cruised through this.
I love that.
So my final thought when you were kind of talking is obviously get comfortable saying no. Because it's a way of life. You will be a happier, healthier person when you learn the art of that. However, please keep in mind that when you do say no, you do not need to provide an explanation for it. So that's probably the next step of people pleasing is when you start to say no. Oh, well, now I got to explain why. It's like, no, you don't. They don't need the story of
Right.
you're like, I mean, obviously, if you are talking with a very close friend and you're like, hey, my grandma's sick, you know, like there's something going on, that's crucial information, right? Because you're close with them. But if it's just like you're meeting a girl for coffee for the first time, or like you're meeting somebody in a meeting, it's like, especially professionally, it's like when I say that I need to reschedule a meeting, maybe business wise, I am just like, I need to reschedule. When can we reschedule?
Yeah.
Because that's all that matters. Like, people don't just naturally deserve all the reasoning behind, especially if you don't know them, if the situation doesn't call for it. It just like, you don't need to over explain yourself. You could simply just say no. And if somebody wants an explanation, weird, why? Ask yourself, is that appropriate for them to be asking me like, well, why are you saying no to this thing? And then if it's inappropriate, then just put them in their place, set another boundary and be like, I feel like I don't need to provide you a reason. I'm just telling you I'm not interested.
Yeah.
That's not what I want to do.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. But put yourself first. It's okay.
Love that.
There is nothing wrong with saying no. It's really not that bad. It's not as scary as it may seem. You just got to practice.
Agreed.
What do you think?
That's what I was going to bring up.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm 23 years old at the time of recording this. I have a lot to go through. I have a lot to figure out. I am no pro at saying no, even though I said it like 3 times in that sentence. I am awful at it because I like making people happy. I don't like seeing people upset, and the thought of making people upset makes me upset. But it's something that comes with practice, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
Say it with me.
Practice.
Obviously, any skill in life is something that you're going to have to go through to learn. So, by practicing saying no and standing up for yourself and saying what you really, truly mean or feel or want to do only benefits you in the long run.
Yeah. You get one life, baby. That's
YOLO.
it. You only live once. Okay?
Period.
Put that shit on your mirror. Tell yourself every day, when you want to say yes, you say no. I'm going to say no.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah?
Do you want to go get matching YOLO tattoos?
No. I do not. If you would have just left it as, your advice, I'm going to put it into action here.
Wait, but why?
I'm going to bring up an alternative. How about we just get matching tattoos of something that we both like?
Our Mac computers.
No. We'll discuss this later.
Okay, that sounds
But
good.
audience, you see what we're talking about. You're
That
you're
was
smelling what we're stepping in, you know?
Practice.
Practice. Oh, that was a good episode.
I think so too.
We'll wrap it up here. We're going to be back next week.
Yeah, play it. Yeah, play it.
Woo! Next week. Let's go middle of July. It's going to be the best day ever.
Yeah.
You guys will hear this on Friday, and we love you. We'll see you soon.
Love you. Have a good weekend. Do something for yourself. Say no.
Say no.